welcome back to another episode with TransAction Florida for Trans Awareness Week. We are here to talk about stigmas that we want to break and myths we're trying to bust with our segment today. We are featuring a trans femme panel. That means everybody on the panel is recognized as a trans feminine energy person. They live their lives female, go by pronoun she and her, and have been living the life. We're all at various stages within our transition, but we're all here to help people understand just exactly what it's like. Just give them a little taste of what it's like to live the trans femme experience. My name is Angelique Godwin. I'm the director of Transgender Equality with EqualityFlorida, and this is my wonderful panel. I'm going to start from my left and go around to underneath me. So starting with you, Sam.
Hi everyone, pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for arranging this panel. It's an honor to be with such wonderful, passionate people in the community, especially such wonderful representations of the trans feminine community. It's truly a pleasure to be here. But anyway, as I mentioned, my name is Samantha Stockley. My pronouns are she, her. I've been in an active transition now for about 6 years. I've been out publicly for about 5 years. My favorite thing about Trans Awareness Week is coming up in the near future. There's actually three things I love about it. It's visibility, education, and the allyship. Pretty much they all encompass each other. Visibility because we have the opportunity to be upfront and to discuss everything, all these stigmas, as you discussed already, any discrimination. Things are brought to the table more often this week. And with that comes the education factor. It gives us opportunity to educate those around us in our community and hopefully those outside of our community, which brings in the third factor, which I love, which is allyship. I think Trans Awareness Week is a wonderful opportunity to bring people to the table that maybe weren't invited before or maybe didn't feel comfortable talking or coming to the table. Obviously, we're a hot topic right now in the political world. So now will be a great opportunity to bring new allies to the table. And I think Trans Awareness Week is a wonderful opportunity to do that.
Awesome. Thank you. And underneath Sammy, we have.
My name is Naomi Wright. I'm owner of Hookador and Hookador Couture. Hookador is a makeup line that I started in about 2021. I have currently, it's still in its early phases, but I have a palette, a 25-pan palette, as well as a jumbo makeup sponge and 8 assorted lashes. My Hookador Couture is the one that I currently still as well run. I make custom clothing for gowns, for prom, for queens, for weddings. I've started doing suits, so we'll see about that. But that's what I do. And so the reason I'm excited or I love Trans Awareness Week is because I feel like when I was younger, I didn't have much trans exposure, and I feel like it would have made a difference for me if I did, at least in knowledge, knowing about different types of trans people or knowing about trans people at all, because I feel like I really didn't get to immerse myself in and know what it was about and who I was because of it until I moved to Florida. And so that really helped. And so I feel like Trans Awareness Week, especially how social media conscious we are, and then as younger people and older people are, that I feel like it exposes us and exposes everybody to different types of trans people and trans people in general. And I really appreciate that. And I feel like I did have that when I was younger. And I'm glad that we have that now.
Never too late to start.
I started young. I started when I was 23. I'll say that. But I could recall as far as back as, I don't know, 15 or 16, having those feelings or like wanting to process and understand what it meant to be trans, but not having the reach to do as such.
We'll definitely dive into that for sure, because I wrote that down. And lastly, right below me, introduce yourself, please, and thank you.
Well, hello everyone. First of all, thank you guys for the invite to share my story and to be a part of this panel. My name is Nicole Levy, aka, as you can see on the screen below, Tay Monet. My pronouns are she and her. And to piggyback off of what Samantha had mentioned, trans awareness to me means three things: to educate, to elevate, and to celebrate. We educate by basically letting the world know who we are. We share about our stories within the community. We share about our personal journeys. I think that that's very important, not only for representation, but also for the normalization of who we are as individuals. We each have a story that contributes to the greater fabric of all communities. So Trans Awareness Week for me just means giving more of that. And going to the second point, to elevate, I love to elevate those voices. People who are on this panel Shout out to Angelique. People in our own communities, we elevate those voices. We really should be sharing. We really should be out there. Recently, with all the hurricane devastation, I've been honored enough to work with a couple of organizations to really help people get the power back, help people get the nourishments they need, help people get the supply that they need to start over. I'm also looking forward to really building on that. And most importantly, for Trans Awareness Week, I believe in celebrating. That's celebrating each other, celebrating our communities, and celebrating the fact that with all of the stuff that our communities have endured over the last few years, especially here in Florida, we celebrate the wins and we celebrate each other and we celebrate that we got over it. The fight is not over, but we did that. And we did that through each other. We did that together, and we should celebrate that. So I'm glad to be on this panel. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you guys. I love this. I think that even for me, I've been trying to find something different to say about it with each panel. And I think that Naomi said something that really resonates with me. I think it's more or less about the representation. I think that this is an opportunity to hear stories and connect with people that not only are coming from situations that we come from, but also someone that we can look up to and say, that person looks like me, or that person sounds like me, or that person is living a life that I resonate with. Because I started my journey legally, we'll say paper-wise and everything, 7 years ago. But I remember being 24 and knowing that this was the decision that I needed to make in the path that I needed to walk in life. I remember being 16 thinking, this is something I wish I could have. It was something I didn't even know was attainable. And much the same feeling as me. If I had this when I was 13, 14, if I had knew that this was an option, it would have been an option I would have jumped at. It would have been something
a lot sooner. Yeah.
I didn't have my first interaction with trans women until I was like 21, and that was like younger trans people. So I always thought it was something that only older trans people did because, you know, they have the money, the time, and the access. And then come to find out that there's people who are 16, 17, 18 living their life. I was like, what? I remember getting my first job and being able to go to work and being fully dressed at 24 as a makeup artist. That was the first time. And I remember the scrutiny that I was going under, but I would have rather gone through that and I would repeat those steps day in, day out to end up where I am now. And I think that that all came from having those people come into my life. And then I moved to Florida 10 years ago. I want to say probably about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, they were doing Trans Awareness Week events in Orlando, Florida. And I was so blown away by it because I was like, I had never seen any city ever do anything like that. And it wasn't the same 3 or 4 people. It was like a week-long event where they had multiple panels and they had people from all over. And I thought it was so cool that they brought all of these different people together, which inspired me to hold this because it wasn't something that we could do last minute. And I really want to zhuzh it up if we're going to do it. We want to do it big, right? But this still allows everybody to tap in and tell their story. So we're giving people a platform. So Trans Awareness Week is that for me. It's not only having the ability to showcase the various representations, but bringing representation that can touch on every level, from all the age groups, from all the races, from all the different gender affirming positions, the gender identities, things like that. So we're expressing that with everybody. So thank you guys for being a part of the journey. So right now we're going to go into some breaking the stigmas. We want to change how people see certain things. So I'm going to ask the entire panel, what's a stigma that is relevant right now in your lives that you're overcoming or that you're dealing with? And I'm going to start with the opposite direction, start with Tamone below me.
I think when it comes to a stigma that I don't want to say affects the whole community, because we're not a monolith. And things that are important to me are not necessarily important to the next person. So I don't want to put this out there. This keeps all of us up at night. However, one of the stigmas that I often hear and I often read, unfortunately, I love to live in the comments section of random videos on Facebook. I know I shouldn't do it. I know I shouldn't exist in that space, but I do. So I would like to speak to a couple of points that I always see in the comments under those trans videos. And the number one for me is I understand, like many other trans women in particular, we understand our journey. I feel like all trans people understand our journey. The one stigma that irritates the crap out of me, at least for me, I understand the trans space that I inhabit. I understand the trans hood that I live in. I live in the she, but I've never a day in my life thought that I was a biological female. I understand that I am a trans woman. I understand my journey from A to B. And I don't feel like me admitting that compromises my womanhood at all. I feel like it has no bearing on the next person's womanhood. We define ourselves for ourselves. We do not allow other people to put us into boxes. So if there was one thing that really irritated me, and we can have debates and we can share, but one thing that is inalienable, and that is how I define myself. How I get to decide that. I get to share that with you, not the other way around. So that's kind of a stigma that I'd like to wipe away, because I feel like it takes away from the very essence and crutch of who we are as individuals. To kind of that voice away and put words in my mouth. Like, no, again, Trans Awareness Week and the education part is really letting people in and really having those conversations that might be uncomfortable or that really might be educational, or at least we're all living in a reality here and in the truth. So that's how I feel.
I agree completely. I think it's wild that people think their opinion of someone outranks someone else's ability to live their own life. And that they, especially somebody they don't know from a fucking hole in the wall, pardon my French, but like, you know, like that idea
they
that
got it all figured out for
and
me.
My whole life, drop everything I've learned, everything that I've experienced, and turn heel to do something for you. I think that's crazy. I agree with you. I think it's insane. I think people should just let people live in their own identities. Nobody, I mean, parents are always disappointed when the kid turns out to be a football star instead of a lawyer, or an artist instead of a doctor, or whatever the case may be. Parents are always disappointed when a kid prefers to have short hair versus long hair, or long hair versus short hair. You know, I remember I lived long enough to have experience when everybody wore baggy clothes, and then when everybody wore tight clothes, and now everybody's wearing clothes.
Back to it.
I've said this every single panel. There has never been a decade in our life where men in skirts have not existed. Men have been in skirts for a time.
I don't understand the pearl clutch. I don't get it.
And women in pantsuits have been around for a long time too. It's a thing. It's real. People do this. It's not mind bending. It's not new. It's just societal norms are no longer at the forefront of how we present ourselves. And I think that that's a myth that I wish was busted. Or things like that.
I don't usually speak for the trans community, but I'm sure a lot of us can just relate to the fact that let us tell you. I'll tell you who I am. I'll present that to you, and we can share in that. My story is my truth.
My transness is not up for discussion.
And it
doesn't define who I am as a person. My degree in psychology didn't come from me being trans. It came from me being smart as fuck. You know, me doing my work and being good at my job has nothing to do with who I present as. It has everything to do with my work ethic and my skill and my ability that I have built, that I have cultivated over the 37 years of me being on earth. It has nothing to do with how I present myself. Whether I wear a pair of heels or a pair of flats or a skirt or a pantsuit, or I wear bright fucking baby blue or lime green and yellow, like none of that changes my ability to take action and to complete tasks. None of that changes me being a good person and showing up for my neighbor and protecting people when they need protecting. None of that
a good daughter, a good sister, a good earner, a good educator, and none of that is compromised.
Yeah, we're all human beings, and that's that. Yeah. Sorry, I skipped all my panelists. I'm sorry. I'm gonna go to you get me round up. You got me. You chains on me. I'm all kind of. No, it's fine. Go ahead now.
Mine's probably a little more niche because I'm a real media, like consume a lot of media. Also, I plan on getting into that space soon, and I feel like a stigma I want to, change or whatever, would be us in a space having to exist only as a trans person in that space, if that makes sense. So, as for example, like seeing like a lot of, which I love, a lot of more trans visibility in like media, so like Euphoria, or just in different shows and movies nowadays. I like that. So stigma is that we always have to be a trans person within that space, as opposed to just a person within that space. That is a stigma, I think, as someone who consumes media and wants to be a part of that more. That's something that I feel like is a stigma I feel like we should end, or like, does it make sense? Like, I don't feel like you have to be a trans actor in a show and about you being trans. You could just be a trans person within that space, or you can just be
your trans is not the storyline for the
correct,
character.
or the story doesn't have to be trans in order for you to be a part of that space. It's very niche, but that's because, again, like I said, I consume a lot of media and thinking about it and thinking about what's the actress Hunter Schafer as an example, like, because I think she touched on that too, because I was reading that recently. She's like, she just wants to be an actress within a movie. It doesn't have to be necessarily about her being trans. She is trans in Euphoria, but in general, she would like to play roles where she is just a trans. She's just an actress within that space or within that movie. And so that would be a stigma that I like, is we don't always have to, we'll always be trans, of course, but within stuff like that, it doesn't always have to necessarily be the definitive thing about us within that sort of space. To me, I just, sometimes, even if someone's not a major activist who is trans or who is gay, to me, sometimes it's showing up or being a part of that space, to me, is still representation.
Yeah. So I think that's such a double-edged sword, because we haven't had any representation for so long. Right. Nothing that was good, right? You know, I remember the earliest representation that we had was The Crying Game. And that
that was like 95 or something. It was a while ago.
It was such an odd dichotomy of what it meant to be trans and to live your life as a woman who was born with male. You know, that was such a wild ideology too. Like, and it was so muddied by some of the other context of that lifestyle and stuff. So I feel like with that, I agree 100%. I like the idea of just seeing trans actresses play roles like I
like 1984, Ryan Murphy when he did 1984.
When she was Angelica. It was like her in that space was just her. She was someone's daughter. You know what I mean? Like, it was that. I loved that type of.
I loved it. Love.
Yeah, and it's very rare that they get to do that. I was gonna say, like, what is it?
Not that I'm sorry, not to cut you off. Not that I don't love things like Pose, that does bring awareness to how trans women were treated and are treated. But I do also like the opposite side of that too, where it's like we can just be trans. We are trans people within a space, but we can just be. It doesn't have to necessarily be a storyline or anything like that. We can.
Yeah, there was the one trans actress. She's been in a couple of different things. I think it's like Lizette, something.
Oh yeah, I forgot her name. I think it's Lizette something.
Yeah, she was in the Jennifer Lopez stripper movie. She played a stripper in the movie, and she wasn't trans. She was just a stripper.
I think in Barbie too, as well.
Yeah.
Barbie.
Oh yeah, in Barbie. I don't know if they had. Did we have trans people in Barbie?
They did have a trans woman in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't
exactly.
seen Barbie.
And so to me, that's part of it too. It's like, you know, you saw the movie and it just was a movie, and it wasn't about
like
her being a trans doll. She was just a Barbie within the movie.
Yeah, she was just Barbie. Yeah, and she was like, she's a smart Barbie at that. I don't even know, like that's why.
Yeah, I think so too. I think she was like the doctor or something. I don't know.
Yeah, no, lawyer Barbie. I think it was. It was like something. But anyway, the point is yeah, I agree. I think that's something that I think people overlook it. I don't even think it's something that's like recognized as a thing, right? That's deja vu. I love this. No, that's good. The conversation going along. Samantha, if you would.
Oh, you're good. No, it's great conversations. I love it. I mean, a stigma that I've been thinking about lately is that there seems to be this connotation that the trans people are trying to merge into society or integrate or trying to purge into society, when the actual truth is we're part of society. We're woven into society. We do the same things as everyone else. We visit the same, the grocery stores, the convenience stores. We pay the same taxes. We watch the same shows. We go to the same jobs. We do the same things. We are woven in and out of society, and this other end of us just seems nonsensical because we live the same lives essentially. Just how we choose to present ourselves and how we choose to navigate our lives. It's only a very small percent of what we participate in society, and it feel like it's made out to be more than it is, and I feel like it's just not true. We are just as much as part of society as everyone else. We contribute as much to society as everyone else. We lift up society as much as everyone else, and and I wish that we would be seen as part of that journey and society rather than a extra of or bringing of or an addition to society.
Yeah, I think in trying to to think outside the box. I think a stigma that I often come across, but also like kind of like rejected. I'm like the commercial where the guy tries to shoot the basket and the basketball player is like not in my house. Like I like ignore it every time, but it keeps coming back up. Is this ideology that as trans women we couldn't cut it as men, so we decided to be women. I think that that's a stigma or an ideology that these small bald men love to throw out. You know, they love to be like, oh, you couldn't hack it as a man till you became a woman, or the ideology that we're seeking attention by doing this. We just want attention. We're attention depraved humans. We don't know how to do anything and like, you know, whatever. So yeah, I'm gonna completely go through all the bullshit that I went through and pay all this money for attention. Yeah. And from you nonetheless, the person who doesn't want to give it to me. Yeah, that makes so much sense. Like, thank you for saving me thousands of dollars on therapy with that one.
There's some things I literally cannot even acknowledge. One, through my own privilege and through my own life, I was a trans child. You know, I transitioned when I was 14, you know, aesthetically. I didn't, you know, take hormones or anything. I was still young. It was the early 90s. We didn't even have access to that. But as far as living in the she, I did that when I was 14. My first day of high school, I was a girl. Literally left 8th grade into summer vacation as Twan and came back as Nicole that September. And to my surprise, people really, even then, people really wrapped their hands around me, and I've still been celebrated and still friends with people in high school. But I think that people forget that like all of our stories are so important, again, to the fabric of our communities. And we all got here differently, and all of our journeys are different. And it's just so important that we really drive that point home, and especially when it comes to educating people.
I think that I have a wonderful analogy for that. I tell everybody that we're all on the same highway, we just drive different cars.
Yep.
And like some people like SUVs, some people can't stand the ground, so they fly. Some people can't stand the ones, so they drive a boat. The point is that everybody is the finish line for everybody is the same, but how you get there and what road you take is completely different. And nobody at the finish line judges you for showing up in a two-wheeler. Nobody judges you for showing up on your own 2 feet. Nobody judges you for landing the plane, the chopper, whatever you flew in on, right? The reality is that we just made a decision to live our best lives. I think that it's so funny. I explained this in one of the other panels. I said, you know, I just chose my happiness. I chose self.
Absolutely.
I chose me. I stopped choosing everybody else. So when I stopped choosing everybody else, I found happiness. If I'm wrong for that, if that's the worst thing I could do, if that's my character flaw, well, then thank you very much. You know, I have no problem with that. I sleep very well at night. I sleep better than I've ever slept in my whole entire life, quite honestly. I don't even ever think I've slept this good before in comparison to the joy and euphoria and happiness I feel being able to live my life as I see fit. And not through someone else, not through my parents' eyes, not through society's eyes, not through school or the law or whoever else. I am me for me. And if I always say that if I was dropped on an island right now, as long as I had access to some food and some clean water, I wouldn't complain. I would not be mad because I'm happy with me. I could live by myself. I don't think there's many other people who could. So I think that that's a reality that people get upset about. Someone told me that they're happy that we find our joy in being ourselves. They're upset that
because a lot of them can't.
Happy and they can't. Yeah.
Because also in their head, a lot of people who wish us no well, a lot of people want exactly that for us, no well. They don't know how to acknowledge trans joy. So automatically what they want to do is discredit and belittle and to minimize. People are outraged a lot of times by seeing trans excellence and trans joy is because in their heads, they never wanted that for us in the first place. They just that's the truth. When people are seething at your very existence, at our very existence, because they, of course, it's clear you never wanted that for us anyway. That's why it's so important to stand 10 toes in our decisions to live out loud, to educate, to elevate, to be seen, and to unify. Because there's strength in our numbers when it's just one bigot against our whole community.
Yeah. I think Eat, Pray, Love said it best. There's a scene where there's an Italian man telling her, he's like, Americans only know how to have fun. They don't know how to have pleasure. They don't know how to take pleasure in the things that they do. They rush through everything. They work too much. They're so focused on the little thing that they forget to see the bigger picture. They don't know how to just relax, he says in the movie. And I resonate listening to you with that a whole lot differently now. I realize that it's never been about any of that. It's that people, misery loves company. They don't want anybody to be happy because they're not happy. Have you ever noticed the people who don't give a crap are the people who are like, whatever, like it's not affecting me. It doesn't affect my life.
None of my business. It's always the most miserable.
I like to say they're jealous of our freedom,
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say we have a little bit of time before I get into the Thanos snap question. I want to ask all of you, our trans femme people, how has living in Florida affected you? With legislation, have you seen an uprise in angry people or outspoken people who feel empowered to speak publicly, or have you felt the harm of legislation with your access to care and things like that? Let's have a quick moment about that, if you all could.
I will say, oh, sorry, guys.
Yeah, go ahead, Naomi.
I will say the only time it's as limited access because I would do like Planned Parenthood for a little bit. That made it harder after DeSantis and his rulings. That to me has been the most. So as of recently, so yes, that's been the most that has been effective. It's been like Planned Parenthood has like had to crack down because they're always funding. They've always had a microscope on them anyway. And so with his rulings, and more so now, it's been harder as far as like getting easier care. So I will say that as much. But it's like on a personal level, I would say for me personally, no. Like there hasn't been any crazy interactions, any TikTok worthy like craziness. Any craziness personally in a personal level. But I will say on that end, that's been tough.
Yeah. Just to preface, for anybody who's watching, any of our viewers who are coming in late to this, last year in Florida, legislation was passed under the disguise of the trans youth ban. It was a gender affirming care ban for trans youth here in the state of Florida, with some fine print that affected adult trans individuals that stopped us from receiving care from some of the biggest and brightest providers here in the state. It is a law that requires us to see a doctor before we can receive care, and it limits the way that we get telehealth as well. So here in the state of Florida. So it's been a huge hindrance. So a lot of the places that we went to, if they did not have a doctor on staff providing that care, we were limited or without until they could procure a doctor to be on staff, which sent a lot of people out of business. A lot of people had to move out of state. A lot of doctors left. We lost a lot of people in general because the legislation goes as far as to punish anyone who is not a doctor by stripping them of their title, making it forbidden for them to perform their job in the state of Florida, causing them fines and fees and potentially jail time on top of it. So there was a lot of reason for them to stop, and it was retroactive from the time the bill was signed. So anybody who was helping us from the time it was introduced to the time it was signed would also be caught in that. So even before the law went into effect, I should say, we were hindered. And so trans masculine and trans feminine individuals specifically were hurt the most as adults because they were hindered just as badly, if not worse in some cases, because the free healthcare that we were getting, or the discounted healthcare we were getting, was completely ripped from under us. So just to preface that, Samantha, I know you have something to say.
And to really talk about the scope of the damage this did, we estimate that about 80% of trans individuals got their care from nurse practitioners, the group of individuals that were banned from giving or providing gender affirming care. So that was 80% of adults in the state of Florida that were negatively affected by this law. It was quite a heavy hit to the transgender community.
Well, I was one of the people who were affected. I trip over my words because that really was a devastating time for me. Having gone to the clinic that particular day that I went to renew my hormones and finding the news out that way, it was a lot. And I'm not sure if the governor cares about
He
the
doesn't.
damage that he caused. I'm sure that he does not. But as bad as that was, what I've enjoyed over the last year has been watching kind of the backlash to that, where people who really were not paying attention to trans rights and what it meant for us to access healthcare really has been paying attention. People are helping educate themselves. People are leaning in and asking questions, and people are coming to their own conclusions about how we as trans individuals access our care, and they're actually siding with us. And I'm seeing this on a bipartisan level when people actually just stop and pay attention. Unfortunately, the people at the top, they're never going to listen for their own reasons. But if I can change my neighbor's mind, or if I can change the person, not even change a mind, but just to educate them on how silly it is for you to believe that you should have access to care, but I can't. On a fundamental level, let's take the trans out of it. Are you saying that you can seek the healthcare that you need, but I can't? That is in itself anti-American. And I'm just glad that people are waking up in this state and really, really coming to the table and having more conversations around what the governor has done. And it's become pretty unpopular. And that has been shown at a lot of the legislation that was defeated in the last session. So
Yeah.
I said the
go.
unity too has been great. The unity of it's surrounded and because of it has been amazing. So as y'all know, it's from the trans marches and all that. So
I was gonna go there. Drag the tally, folks, and everything that they did, marching to the Capitol, being seen, really, really making our voices be heard. That helped change the tide here in Florida, and a lot of us. I'm more than grateful, but most important, I'm glad that we get to go back into our individual communities and celebrate and educate and really rally people around us. So hopefully, the next time, if we endure some attacks like this, we have a better sense of self and a better sense of being Florida strong.
Yeah. Speaking of which, as the organizer of the Trans March last year, I'll be organizing it again this year. We're going to be doing it again. So do look out for that. Keep that on your calendar. I think it's like we're aiming for March. The session starts the first or second week of March. So we'll be right after that session or on that first week or something to that effect. So I have to turn in my paperwork for the March in December to the city of Tallahassee so that we can actually have the street blocked off and such. So definitely you'll start hearing more about that in December. But I'll announce that here for Trans Awareness Week. We're going to be back because I think that I don't want to wait this year for something to happen to react. I want to be proactive this year and I want to just show up ready. So be on the lookout for that gathering because I think it's better for us to come in making noise rather than waiting. If anybody has any more comments on these topics, any other last words before we get into our last question? All right, you guys have made it through. We're going to do the Thanos Snap question. At this time, I want to know if there was one stigma that you could erase from the board completely in a snap. What would it be? And I'm going to start with Samantha, if you would be so kind.
Just one stigma?
Just one. You only get one.
It's okay to not be okay. I want people to know that it's okay to have rough times in your life. And mental health is serious, and it's just as important to physical health. And I wish people would drop the stigma surrounding mental health.
I agree. I think that people oftentimes force themselves to be okay when they're not, or force themselves to be perceived or seen as okay even when they're not. And I think that you're absolutely right. I think more people should embrace all of their feelings and don't hide them, or don't swallow them or shrink them. Feelings demand to be felt, and you should embrace them 100%. I agree.
I think mine would be that actually, I was gonna say the girls, but I feel like some of the guys too, that all of us have to look and maintain a certain way in order to be considered trans or to be considered desirable. Because I see that a lot of the folks having worried that, I don't look this way, or I feel like everyone's journey is different. And if we remove that stigma, then people will be more comfortable being how they feel their transness is versus how they feel like it has to be to be either accepted in society or accepted within the community, etc. So that'd be mine.
I think I can relate to that. I grew up around a lot of beautiful Black trans women, and I think thief is a comparison of joy, comparison to thief of joy. So I think a lot of times I would see these beautiful women, yourself included, and be like, damn, I wish I looked like this. I wish I had that, or I wish that this was my reality. But in all reality, my own journey is my own, and I had to find the beauty in that and find the beauty in me, so to speak, to
And I say that because of the same way, like, same thing. When I was younger, I would see these lovely girls and I'd be like, oh, I'm not this. And I feel like removing that stigma and not worrying about it until I feel like I got to the point where I want to be. Does it make sense? So I wish that for the young girls, essentially.
And I wish that they, when they look up to people, I wish that people looked up for inspiration and not for idolization.
I have to be this. Yeah.
I like that idea that I want to look exactly like this person, or I want to be exactly like that person. I want to have this or that. I think the ideology that you can love yourself into that light and be that light or share that kind of energy. Yeah. I think that's good too. But I know that that's hard. Easier said than done, 100%.
It is 100%. So that's mine because I'm thinking of young me.
I think for me, the one stigma that I would just love to disappear, just go away, that is the idea around sexual reassignment surgery, the stigma around top surgery, taking hormones. It is not self-mutilation. It is not mental illness. It is not any of those crazy reasons. It is our access to healthcare, to access ourselves. And let me just tell you this, for all you people who might not understand, us trans people, there's a cure for us. There is a cure for your transgenderism, and it's called the transition. And those things that I mentioned help us get to the other side and help complete our journey. So to understand that is to understand us. That is a stigma that I wish to disappear because it's absolutely just rooted in ignorance and not a good reflection of our journey to ourselves. So if you want on that train, understand where it goes, babe.
That I totally got gagged by you because I thought you were gonna go a completely different direction with that. Wait a minute, and then it wasn't a bad direction; it was just a completely different direction. But to piggyback off that, I the stigma that one has to fully transition, or that full transition is full body surgery. I don't think that anyone, you don't have a single surgery for your transition if it.
Yeah, and this is true. It's really our journeys define who we are. And that really is the greater point. There are a lot of people who look at each issue kind of separately and they have their own comfort levels with how they feel. My point exactly is there's a lot of people who don't understand why someone may want to take hormones. They might not understand why someone may want top surgery. But a lot of the narrative out there are that these things are a bad thing, that they are self-mutilation, that they are caused by mental illness. My point is to say, no, that's so far from the truth. And again, if you want to know, ask us. But those things are not done as some journey into self-hatred for ourselves. So a lot of those things set us free. Being able to take hormones, being able to live my authentic self, those things set me free. Those are good things. Please don't tarnish those things. That is my point.
No, I love that.
To piggyback off that, I think that's something that everyone in the world can relate to. Doing something to improve yourself and to feel good about yourself, whether that be going to get your hair done, your nails, makeup, buying a nice dress, doing anything that affirms who you are as a person. That is what the gender affirming experience is. That is affirming you as an individual, you as a person, no matter what that looks like. I think that's something that everyone can relate to. And I think that if more people could see it as like, you are doing the same by going to the gym, you are doing the same by
just people do it often. Since people do it often and don't realize that is still the same thing that we're doing. But so
you ask anybody who really works out and body builds, they also
that's gender affirming care.
A form of hormone replacement therapy.
That is gender affirming care.
But ask somebody, you
absolutely. So the men who get their hair replacement to get it fuller.
All of it. It's all valid. But thank you guys. Oh, y'all are killing because this is good. I feel like I need a part 2. I don't know. Maybe I need to do like after dark or turn off the camera and keep it going. But no, thank you guys so very much for joining us. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you for having us.
I'm so happy to have you guys be just one tiny glimpse into the trans femme world and to the trans femme experience. And thank you for sharing your personal opinions and experiences as well. We're going to continue the conversation in our next episode. Please stay tuned as we continue to celebrate Transgender Awareness Week with more voices speaking up about their experiences and the lives that they live from the various parts of our trans community. Because as Tay Monet said, we are not monolithic. Good evening, babies. We'll see you later. Thank you so much for joining.
Bye.